Well, good morning and welcome to the latest in our ongoing series, Statewide Workforce Strategy Series. I am Robert Allen, the President and CEO of the Texas Economic Development Corporation, and let me be the first to welcome you today. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have today with our distinguished guests on our two panels. And of course, we are hosting this series with Brian Daniel, the Chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, and he'll be with us in just a little bit to introduce our second panel. Today we have an action-packed conversation planned for you with some of Texas's leading economic development professionals. And I'm really excited for this conversation to talk about workforce and workforce strategies from a little bit of a different perspective. If you've been with us before, you know that we've talked to institutions of higher education, whether they be community colleges, whether they be four-year traditional institutions, whether they've been other institutions who have unique workforce programs. And so we've talked a little bit about the education side of this conversation. And today we're going to take a look from the EDO or economic development officials side. We also have a really special guest to join us as well in Eddie Comparano, who I'll introduce in a minute. And Eddie will be on the first panel with us from the Port of Brownsville. So providing a different perspective as a facilitator, a regional convener, if you will, from the Port of Brownsville. Thanks to the tireless efforts of all of today's panelists, Texas has won the Governor's Cup for a record-smashing 9 years in a row. You see some of those Governor's Cups behind me. These are won and given to the state with the most qualified economic development projects. And workforce, of course, being one of the main issues driving the state's ability to continue to win these Governor's Cups. And today's panelists, along with a lot of other people in the state of Texas, are really driving this effort and on the front lines of us winning these Governor's Cups. So again, if you can't tell, I'm very excited about today's conversation. But before I jump into today's conversation and introduce our first panel, I want to remind everybody that we do plan to save some time for Q&A at the end of the conversation. If you have a question for our panelists, do not hesitate to put it in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to get to it at the end. Without further ado, let's jump into our first panel. Eduardo Comparano is the Port Director and CEO of the Port of Brownsville. He was appointed to this position in May 2007 and is responsible for the operations of the only U.S. deepwater seaport located directly on the U.S.-Mexico border. During his tenure, the Port of Brownsville has improved its financial position by increasing its cash reserves, issued debt for infrastructure improvements, undertaken major road and infrastructure improvements and repairs, and has attracted port-related investments through public and private sector partnerships. Mr. Comparano's public service extends to his active participation in numerous civic and maritime industry organizations and committees. Eddie, thank you so much for being with us, and I'll be back to you in just a minute. Our next panelist comes to us today from my hometown, and I'm excited that he is able to take some time to join us today. Mike Rosa is Senior Vice President of the Dallas Regional Chamber's Economic Development Program, a position he has held since 2004. Mike leads the economic development staff in critical relationships with regional communities and allies, the state of Texas, the Chamber's board and executive committee, and economic development investors. In his current role, Mike and his team have successfully engaged numerous corporate moves to the Dallas region, including 9 Fortune 500 headquarter relocations and other significant headquarters, office, and industrial projects. From 2002 to 2004, prior to joining the Dallas Regional Chamber, Mike was a senior vice president with the Buxton Company, a Fort Worth-based consulting firm that selects locations for prominent national retailers and helps cities with retail-oriented economic development programs. For 14 years, from 1988 through 2002, Mike was with the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce, beginning as Director of Research and ultimately becoming the Senior Vice President of Economic Development. So to say he knows the Metroplex well would be an understatement. In 2015, he served as chairman of the Texas Economic Development Council, the 800-member statewide organization for economic developers. He also provides leadership to the DFW marketing team, the Association of Economic Development Professionals representing Dallas-Fort Worth area cities. Mike is one of 9 appointees to the State of Texas Incentives Oversight Committee that serves the Texas legislature. Mike, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to jumping to you in just a minute. Rounding out our first panel discussion is a good friend from deep East Texas. But to make this introduction, I want to turn it over to another good friend from deep East Texas and a former board member of the Texas Economic Development Corporation, Nancy Wyndham. Nancy?
Good morning. I'm Nancy Wyndham with the Texas Forest Country Partnership. We are the 12-county rural economic development organization that's been around for 61 years, and we're located in rural deep East Texas. We're also a very proud member of the Texas Economic Development Corporation. I want to thank the Texas Workforce Commission and the TxEDC for hosting this webinar today and talk about workforce strategies. But before I begin, I want to say thank you, Governor Abbott, for your leadership of this state in keeping us workforce ready. Your tri-agency initiative is working well. Everybody's working hard to keep us number one. So go big in Texas. But it's my honor today to introduce one of the panelists, and that's Eddie Hopkins. Eddie is the chairman of our board of directors. He's also executive director for the Jasper Economic Development Corporation. He is president of the Jasper Public Schools Foundation. He's vice chair of the University Interscholastic League Sports Officials Committee. He's a board member of the Workforce Solutions for Deep East Texas. He is Jasper County Airport Advisory Board member and the Jasper Higher Education and Technology Foundation. He's also immediate past chairman of the Texas High School Basketball Officials Association. Eddie graduated from the Texas Department of Public Safety All Services Trooper Academy and the Southern Methodist University and Intermediate Banking School. And he also has his basic economic development course with the Texas Economic Development Council. And I am proud and congratulate Eddie on his most recent appointment from Governor Abbott to serve as a board member for the Angelina and Neches River Authority. So Eddie, thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to hearing the rest of the presentation today. Appreciate the opportunity to be part of the agenda. Thank you.
You wear multiple hats, as we heard in your introduction, so I'm really interested to have you join this first panel discussion. Eddie Comparano, let me come back and start with you. You know, CEO of the Port of Brownsville, again, a little bit different than some of our other panelists today as EDO individuals. You know, we talked earlier as, you know, more of a facilitator and regional convener at the port, obviously a key critical piece of the success of the region. But let me ask you a similar question that I'm going to ask the other two panelists to start this conversation. Workforce and workforce strategy, obviously, the number 1, 2, and sometimes 3 issues facing decision makers when they're looking at a particular region. If they're looking at the Port of Brownsville, they may have workforce needs that they're trying to fill. So what are you hearing on the front lines at the port in terms of the needs of workforce today with those that are looking at the port and the region in Brownsville?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much, Chairman Daniels and all the panelists today. I think we hear, you know, first, we are a large landowning port authority, but we're also the largest industrial employer. So we kind of hear from both sides of it. We get a lot of inquiries from businesses that are looking to expand in the region. So we get the new individuals that are talking to us about projects. And then we also get our current tenants who are in kind of somewhat specialized fields, and many of them are in expansion mode as well. So we kind of get it from the existing as well as from prospective tenants. But you know, one of the largest things we hear about is just kind of what is the availability of workforce. And one of the things that has changed so dramatically over the years, it's no longer about, you know, city limit lines or county lines. It's really about the regions. What we're hearing from large industry, they don't really care about Brownsville per se. They want to know about the Rio Grande Valley and the region. What is the region doing to address our concerns? How is the region working together and collaborating? So that is a conversation that is really kind of, I think, changed dramatically over the years. This idea of Friday night football is kind of out the window because that strategy doesn't work anymore. It's really about having to collaborate, having to bring the resources to bear. Who are the providers in the region? How do we facilitate making contact them? Or how do we make it simple? How do we convene that discussion here at the port for those industries? And the same thing is happening in many respects with our current industry that certainly is in expansion mode, is that they're looking for specific needs. Obviously in large scale industry, it's more the technical that technical space. We hear a lot about welders and pipe fitters, but the same holds true with electricians. I mean, one of the things that's really very significant and impactful at the moment here is SpaceX. And as we all know, we've all seen what Elon Musk has asked. It's not about essentially looking for the best and brightest minds in his efforts, but it's also about the workforce that he needs, whether it's electricians, plumbers, carpenters, equipment operators. And so we see that trending really more significantly. While some of it might be on the delivery end of a project, it still remains the case, because in large scale industry, a lot about is how do you keep the industry going, which means is it's going to be laden with a lot of maintenance, a lot of workforce related to just ensuring that the 24/7 operation is not interrupted in any way. So I will say that I've never seen as much collaboration, as much discussion, as much willingness to work within the region as ever before. And that is, I think, a good sign for not only our region, but really throughout the state of Texas. We're Texans first, so that's kind of, we all come together really quick. And so, but we're hearing certainly a sense of the interest is beginning to ramp up. I think that we're starting to see the ramp up to get us to where we were at the pre-pandemic phase is going to take a lot of effort, a lot of work, and it's actually going to be very good for us in terms of driving our regional economy. So it's a good time, I think, to be in the region, and certainly a good time to be in this space.
We're Texans first. You heard it from Eddie Comparano himself. I thought it was a great statement, a great comment. You also used some other great words: collaboration, regionalism. These are words that we've been hearing throughout our series, and we certainly take a regional approach to marketing the state of Texas to the points that you articulated. You have to be able to reach beyond just your city boundaries to pull in resources to meet those demands. And somebody who operates at the center of one of the hottest regions in the state of Texas is, of course, Mike Rosa at the Dallas Regional Chamber. Mike, let me bring you in here. Let me ask you a similar question. You sit in Dallas. You've got Fort Worth as well to be able to pull from, and a lot of other impressive communities surrounding Dallas proper. So what are you seeing on the front lines as you're marketing the region out there to decision makers and site selectors? What are you seeing in terms of workforce demands right now?
Well, Robert, thank you. And it's good to be on with everyone this morning. And hello, Texas. When I started at the Fort Worth Chamber heading research in 1988, 33 years ago, my goodness. And for many years after that, I never thought that I would see a location factor for companies that was as important to the Dallas-Fort Worth region as DFW Airport was and had been. And it still is hypercritical to the success of this region and to really the success of the state of Texas. But talent has moved past that location factor and really any other location factor of note. And it has been talent, that is, has been in the number one importance factor now for several years. In the last 5 years, and thanks to the good work of all the cities in the region, have tremendous economic development teams leading them, and the good team here at the DRC and our friends at the Office of the Governor, Robert, you and your team. We've been successful, as has the rest of the state of Texas. And I cannot think, I tried for the last couple of days to think of a project that we worked successfully in partnership to land in this region where talent was not the number one issue. And I couldn't come up with one. There might be one out there somewhere. but I certainly could not come up with one and will not come up with one no matter how hard I try. It is the paramount issue. It has been for a while now. We all know that. And when we're dealing with companies, whether it's through their advisors, their agents, their consultants, the brokerage community, or as we often get a chance to work and have first touch directly with companies, talent is the issue. And the HR, the CHR officer, the head of talent, whoever that person is, that is our person that we spend the most time with, because that is the big risk for companies that are thinking, especially if they're thinking about big moves. If they're thinking about adding a 14th office to their 13 office portfolio around the country, there's a little bit less risk in that, right? There's still risk, but it's a little bit. They're thinking about moving a headquarters from California and uprooting everything and going somewhere else. They're putting everything on the line to be able to do that. And it's not just true of headquarters. It's true of major manufacturing facilities. It's true of any company that's making significant decisions. These are tough decisions. And so the talent issue, the workforce issue, there's risk there. And I am so proud of the work that Texas has done over the years, all of you on this call, the way we've worked together as a big team to put Texas in a position to have a brand and have a reputation being a great place for talent. And all kinds of talent. Everybody on this call knows that there's a lot of diversity in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, manufacturing, logistics, IT, not just headquarters and financial and some of the things we're best known for outside of our borders. But we have branded this state, and certainly DFW is branded as a great place for talent, but we've got to keep working at it. And we've still got to be responsive to those questions and not take it for granted. And we still find ourselves, I feel like if the Dallas-Fort Worth area has to prove up its talent, then everywhere else must be having to prove up its talent as well, because we're the fourth largest market in the country. And still providing testimony to the talent that is here. It's layered. It's the migration coming into the state, coming into this particular region. It's the wonderful school systems, colleges, and universities that we have to grow our own. It's the attractiveness of Texas, whether it's state income tax or all the other wonderful amenities and things about being in Texas that help companies that want to bring people with them if they make the move to Texas. To attract the employees as well. The employees got to want to come here. We have sort of a layer cake of advantages when it comes to workforce and the ability to continue to draw people and companies, but not if we don't collaborate and not if we don't continue to work hard at it and not take our position for granted.
Mike, you said, we've got to keep working at it. And I think it was a great comment. It reminded me of a conversation I had recently with Governor Abbott. And I was asking him about, what's it like, right? We've been on top for so long. We're number one, and everybody is trying to play catch up, frankly. And he had a great comment along the same lines, and that was very bluntly, we cannot get cocky. We have to keep working at it. We have to keep pushing ahead. And I think, Eddie Camperano's comments about the regional approach, your comments about the regional approach, absolutely spot on in terms of the way in which we can continue at this pace and be successful. Somebody who knows a little something about regionalism is our next panelist. And of course, I'm talking about Eddie Hopkins over in the Deep East Texas region. And Eddie wears two different hats for the sake of this conversation: Executive Director of the Jasper Economic Development Organization, but also Chair of the Texas Forest Country Partnership. So Eddie, a unique position, right? You're running your own economic development organization, but you're chairing a multi-county regional effort as well. So let me pose a similar question to you. What are you seeing both in Jasper, but also what are you seeing in Deep East Texas in terms of the requests, if you will, from those that are looking at your region in terms of the workforce needs?
Thank you, Robert. And it is good to be here today to represent the Texas Forest Country Partnership. And we do cover 12 counties in Deep East Texas. One of the things that we first had to overcome was, and I say this often now, we had to rent the curtain. A lot of folks see us as being hidden behind the pine curtain. And sometimes we feel that we are. I came out of 30 years of banking and joined the Jasper Economic Development Corporation. But while I was in banking and when I had the opportunity to visit with human resources and get involved in hiring tellers, I would always ask this question to our tellers: would you bank here? And it kind of posed the question back to them. So when I began my economic development career, I had to start looking introspectively to our Jasper area, but also to our region, because would you put a business here? Would you want to come to Deep East Texas? And if there's any hesitation in the answer, then we need to find out why and try to attack that issue. So from a marketing standpoint, we really have to look at the fact that we are selling what we have. We are actually out trying to advertise our resources and assets. One of the things that we do have in Deep East Texas is we do have a qualified workforce. It's just trying to find them and get them to be active and throw their name in the hat per se. We were privileged in Jasper recently to just recruit a IT company that was looking all over the state of Texas to place their company. And when we started our dialogue with them, we realized they wanted to revitalize rural America. And I started sweating, thinking about, my goodness, they're going to need 150, 200 employees. How am I going to supply that? Well, they came back to us and they gave us a radius that they'd like to have around Jasper. But Robert, here's the one thing that really caught my ear. They were not really looking for skilled workers. They were looking for workers that had the aptitude to learn. And that broadened our horizon. That opened up some doors for us. So when they would come to the job fairs, they were given an aptitude test. And from that aptitude test, we are now today from 0 employees to 135 with the hopes of being at 200 within another year. So that opened up a whole new aspect of workforce for us. We have a lot of folks that have the acumen to work in certain areas. It just hasn't been identified yet. So by this company, I think, blazing a trail, maybe other companies are going to look at this and say, hey, maybe we need to grow our own, as Mike said. Maybe we need to bring those folks in that we would like to keep in our area. And the one thing that the company does is they have their own boot camps. And it's a 6, 2, 4, 6, 8 week boot camps. They're unpaid. Until they finish the boot camp, they're not on the payroll, but they like to train their own. So what we're doing is going to try to use that as a model. I served 18 years on our school board, and we had a lot of paraprofessionals that we knew could be good teachers. And so we provided the resources and paid their tuition for them to go back and get their degrees to get their teaching certificates because we knew they wanted to live here. So I think growing our own, finding companies like Provalis that see the workforce labor pool that we have and are willing to train those, I think is going to set us up for a very bright future. And we're excited about the regionalism that all 12 of our counties have come together in the partnership and have bought into the regional aspect. What is good for Lufkin is going to be good for Jasper. What is good for Crockett is going to be good for Hemphill. So we really want to buy in and make sure that we're doing this collaboratively and utilizing every resource we have as a region.
What a great real world example of how it works. And you talked about, your desire to use that example as a model in the region and potentially beyond. It's a great segue to remind everybody of why we're having today's conversation and why the chairman and I put together this series. And we have told you from the beginning, we do not want to reinvent the wheel. There are really successful examples and models out there of workforce programs. And you just articulated one of them. And it's really important if we want to stay on top, if we want to win more of these governor's cups behind us, that we share ideas and that we talk to our partners beyond our borders about what's working, what's not working. Because the dirty little secret about it is other states will take advantage when we may stumble or when we may not be able to deliver on that talent. And they, by the way, work every day to try to find those examples. Very hard to find them, by the way, because you all are doing such a fantastic job. So we want to keep it that way. Eddie Comparano, let me come back to you for a second. Let's talk about, are there any specific examples, unique programs that you've encountered running the Port of Brownsville that you've seen in the region, whether, it was a request maybe from, a project that may have been looking at your region. And again, we talked about you as a facilitator and a connector, coming together and developing a unique workforce related program in the region. Any specific examples you can share with us?
Well, I can, and something that Mr. Hopkins says that really resonates. And I think what are one of our biggest attributes? We have available and young workforce. But I think the biggest opportunity is creating those opportunities for those people that can fill those jobs here today. So I kind of point to Keppel Amphils as an example. Here's a company that, two things about Keppel that just to let people know, they're the largest domestic fabricator of new offshore drilling platforms in the United States, right here in Brownsville, in the Rio Grande Valley. Two is that there's a lot of firsts. They compete in a very competitive global marketplace. And one example that really comes to mind is that, the largest modular land-based offshore drilling rig in the world was built here in the Rio Grande Valley, and it's still in existence today in Sakhalin Island off the Russian coast. Well, they needed to obviously have the skill set necessary to be able to accomplish that job, and they work very collaboratively with every provider in the region, whether it's the four-year institutions, whether it's the community colleges, whether it's the local school districts. They also work with special nonprofits that are doing very specific job training, going out and finding people, training them, making sure that they not only gain the proper skill sets to technically do a job, but develop the personal skills. We hear a lot about that from people. It's the ability to make eye contact. Those the simple things, but employers point to those issues a lot. And so Keppel's is one entity that we have worked with very closely. We continue to work with very closely, but they have not only collaborated with the regional entities, but they've also developed their own program where if you can send them to us, where they have already some basic understanding, we'll take it from there. We will produce the skilled welder beyond just the basics. We will provide them the training. We will provide them the opportunity. They do one program that I particularly like, and I think it's an example of what they do. They have gone and worked with the University of Texas of the Rio Grande Valley, where they'll go in and they may hire a large cohort of graduating engineers, and they will bring them into Keppel Amphils, and they will expose them to every aspect of the build of their company, whether it's the administrative side, the financial side, yard operations, procurement, and they have all of those graduating engineers participate in each of those areas. And then they allow them to say, where is the area that you would like to concentrate your practice in? And then they decide, and they actually keep them very long term by providing that opportunity. And so they don't have just, hey, we need it now. They need to be ready to go, because there is time. There is, the company culture they need to get. But that program is particularly effective. So, we work with them to be able to make those contacts with the right people to bring the right individuals to bear. And so I think that, there are a lot of companies doing those kinds of things, but that's one particular example that I can think of here at the Port of Brownsville.
What a great example. And you made the comment there in terms of talking about the UTRGV program. Some people think you need it now, and we hear that, right? If you just read the press or reports of economic development successes, you would think, it's like we would go into the meeting and talk about the project and, okay, I need 1,000 workers tomorrow. That may be the case, but oftentimes there is this desire for the long-term success of the project. And I think this is the reason why we've been so successful. And certainly Mike Rosa in the chamber, have certainly been successful in this endeavor. And so, Mike, let me ask you a similar question, but in the context of, one of the things that I think makes Texas so successful is not only do we have a verified long-term track record of success to display to prospects, to show them that this is not our first rodeo, so to speak, but we're also able to show them that we want to be your partner for the long term. I know DRC does that. Everybody on this call does that. So any examples from the chamber's perspective where you might have had a prospect come in and say, hey, we might need X or Y in the workforce, world, and how did you potentially partner with whether it's educational institutions or other partners throughout the region to accommodate those needs?
All right, thank you, Robert. And I do want to share, you touched on it briefly, a little secret sauce to making some magic. And it is magical when you are with a corporate prospect and in the room is the Economic Development Office or the Chamber of Commerce and representatives from the community college or the university and workforce representative. And when it is clear to the prospect that it's not the first time that those local people have met each other, you know, when that relationship is evident and clear and seasoned, it is magical. And it gives that corporate prospect all the confidence in the world. Okay, this is a place that can support me and support their own people and get things done. So that's a little magic that's pretty easy to construct and makes a big, big difference. And I will tell you, Commissioner Daniel and all the folks at Workforce, you know, I think we have a pretty good research team at the Dallas Regional Chamber. We're capable of doing a lot of research and output and convincing materials because we have it and we do a good job. But I am continually amazed by the depth of the knowledge and the research and the information that's available through Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas, Lori's team, or North Central Texas or Tarrant County. All the workforce organizations have so much data, so much research, and it enriches everything that we do in corporate recruitment. That partnership is direct for us, particularly with Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas. It's the office we deal with mostly, and just proud of that relationship. And it ties into my example. We have an area in southern Dallas County. It's the inland port area. It's got the intermodal hub. It's got the sort of the convergence of I-35 and I-45 and I-30 and I-20. Everybody knows that spot if you've been in Texas for any length of time. It's a fantastic industrial location spot, and the roster of companies there, L'Oreal, Amazon, Procter & Gamble, Georgia Pacific, Sprouts, BMW, Quaker Oats, all these companies putting significant facilities there. But the areas can be a little bit removed from the workforce, the neighborhoods and the communities. And we started having so much success that the companies were being strained for access to workers. So what we were able to do as a chamber to bring the business community to bear, JP Morgan Chase funded a study, and we partnered directly. The DRC and Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas partnered to survey all of the employers and employees and job seekers and find out what were the gaps, what was everybody needing, what was kind of not clicking, what could be done, and what were some things that companies were having to do to you know, get work. And we discovered it was largely a transportation issue. Just people that didn't have a vehicle for their first kind of big job or whatever it was, just distances and proximities and all those sorts of things. It kind of boiled it down to a transportation issue. And then from there, because of the partnership with Workforce and the Chamber, JP Morgan Chase, we were able then to bring in other partners like Dallas Area Rapid Transit, like some rideshare programs, like Toyota and others, and really get down to the heart of it. And it's been very, very successful. And in the end, what you have is just a sweet story. You've got companies that now have tremendous confidence in the market, will tell that testimony, that have the employees that they need. And you also have the people that are able to get to the jobs that have come to the market. So it's a really sort of a virtuous cycle. And that's probably, there are other examples. That's, Robert, that's probably one of my favorites because it is a sweeping example of leveraging lots of talents and resources.
You know, Mike, you talked about the magic sauce and you know, a little secret about making it. And I couldn't agree more with you in terms of the example that you gave. You know, one of the things that I think really sets Texas apart is its ability to deliver and answer, you know, questions. I tell people all the time, you don't necessarily have to have the answer to the question. You just have to know where to get the answer. And we encourage people on this webinar series and previous conversations specifically addressed towards our educational institutions. You know, if you're not on a first name basis and in regular communication with your local education institutions, whether it's 4 years, whether it's community colleges, whatever the case may be, you know, certificate programs, you need to start now. And you need to start reaching out and know all of your educational partners, know their names, start a regular dialogue, regular conversation, so that when the time comes, to your point, bring them into the room and introduce your good friends who are going to help us all take care of your workforce needs. Eddie Hopkins, you gave a great example of Corvallis earlier, and I'm looking at my notes. You went from 0 to 135 employees. You're wanting to go to 200. Let's pull the curtain back a little bit more, if you will, on that. How do you do that? we talked about educational institutions, you talked about regionalism, you talked about going, outside of the boundaries of just, your city per se. So give us a sneak peek behind the curtain. Where do you start when a company like Provallis says, hey, this is what we want to do? Where do you go? How does it work?
One of the things that we've been really blessed with is that the fact that they bought into the registered apprenticeship program that the Texas Workforce Commission is making available. And we're excited about where that program is going to take us in the future when we start engaging our students and folks into that apprenticeship program, because that's just going to breed success for them. It's going to create, we hope, tenure. It's going to create an environment with those employees starting out through the apprenticeship and then evolving into a full-time employee. So we're really excited of where that's going to take us. One of the dilemmas we're facing is that this $3 million, 30,000 square foot building that we built for them downtown is about to be full. So now we're going to have to start looking for more space, which is a good problem to have. But in our region, Robert, we are still seeing positive conversations happening through collaboration with our educational partners and industry. And I think for a long time, that's kind of where we've not been as efficient as we should have been. But we're bridging that gap. My colleague that works with me here at our EDC just went through the Talent Pipeline Management Academy through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Mike. And it taught us techniques, and it taught us how that we have to collaborate we have to build collaboratives with these different businesses that do the same thing. And that sometimes is daunting to get folks that are competitors in the same room, but we need to do that to hear the pain points they have so that we can address their workforce needs. And we're doing that just next week with a fabrication company, a worldwide fabrication company that's located in South Jasper. We're bringing all of our welding instructors together from a collaboration that we have built so that the welding instructors can hear STI say what their welding needs are. Eddie talked about the Port of Brownsville and the welders that we have, but we need welders that can do more than build barbecue pits. We need welders that can physically do some specialized welding for these companies, or our kids are going to get left behind. So that's two collaborations that we've started, but I can't say enough for the registered work, the apprenticeship programs that Texas Workforce Commission supports and it is making available, because it's really going to revolutionize, I think, our workforce.
Well, Eddie, I couldn't agree with you more. And we've talked a lot about those apprenticeship programs in some of our previous webinars, and they were great conversations. Yeah, look, I could go all day. This is a fascinating conversation. We're hearing real world examples of how it's working. You even got, a recipe of how to make some of the magic sauce from Mike Rosa. So that's free, by the way, for you. So use that to your advantage. Eddie Camperano, Mike Rosa, Eddie Hopkins, thank you all. They've graciously agreed to stick around and take some questions at the end. So let me remind you, if you have a question for any of them or our next panel, feel free to submit it to us in the chat function below. It is now my honor to introduce our good friend and our co-host of this series. And of course, I'm talking about Chairman Brian Daniel. We all know he's chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, but in his current role, he knows a thing or two about economic development, running the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tourism. So without further ado, to introduce our really impressive second panel as well, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in today. These webinars have been so much fun. This one, like all the rest, as fun as it is, there are so much information here that you can really put to use where you are. I think we're going to continue in this second panel to really learn some things that are going on in the state. You sometimes hear there's an old expression that we can be greater than the sum of our parts. And I think what you're seeing today is these locally led efforts. When we add those up, that really is what's positioned Texas so well in the global marketplace as we continue to add jobs through this state. So we kind of, if we go north to south, we kind of had an eastern tour of Texas. We went from Dallas to Brownsville via Lufkin. And I think we learned a lot of things. We all have connections to various cities in the state. My mom was born and raised in Dallas, for example. I've been doing a lot of work in East Texas, and a lot of my mother's family's from there. And so I have some ties to Lufkin. I had cousin that was at Angelina College as an instructor there for a number of years. Brownsville. I'm from San Benito, Texas, so I would say this: Brownsville is one of the best performing suburbs of San Benito, Texas that there is. They're the county seat, so there's a little bit of Friday night football action that goes on between them. But what's going on at the port, we're seeing all up and down the Texas coast, and what Eddie's doing there at the Port of Brownsville really just exemplifies some of the creative and innovative things that we're doing to make sure that companies can be successful here. It's the success of those companies that lets them create more and more jobs for Texans. And that's what we're really talking about here today. So great panel for the group that got to be first. This next panel promises to have the same impact for you. And I think you're going to learn some wonderful things. So we're going to go on another tour of Texas. And we're going to go north to south, but we're going to go west this time. So we're going to start in Amarillo, Texas, and we're going to by way of El Paso. I'm sure Southwest Airlines has that exact route, Amarillo to El Paso to San Antonio. And so we're going to get there in the same way. I want you to meet these panelists, though, because it's a really impressive group. I'm going to kind of read these intros because I want to get it right. There's a lot of impressive things here, and I think you're going to see that as we put together this next panel here today. First up, because I'm in alphabetical order, he gets to be first up. Plus, he's in Amarillo on our tour from Amarillo to San Antonio. It's Kevin Carter. He's president and CEO of the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. He's been that since April 2019. He's responsible for leading efforts in the promotion of opportunities through business recruitment, expansion, and retention in the Amarillo area. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Amarillo is absolutely making their mark. I spent a lot of times, I worked for a number of years in Lubbock. I spent a lot of times on the high plains. Watching Amarillo in action has been so much fun for me in my professional career. You know, their unemployment rate's one of the lowest in the state, often the lowest in the state. They are creating jobs for folks in the northern high plains, and it's pretty impressive what they're doing. And Kevin's part of that leadership. He graduated from Wayland Baptist University and with a bachelor's degree in business administration. He's also a 2012 graduate of the Oklahoma Economic Development Institute and designated economic development finance professional. His experience in the Plains area and in the Panhandle area of Texas, it goes beyond his work today with the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. He's also been the executive director of the High Ground of Texas, and he's worked with the Plainview Economic Development Corporation as well. He continues to serve on boards throughout the region, notably the Texas Tech Health Science Center Advisory Board, Amarillo Canyon United Way, and the Texas Department of Agriculture's Rural and Economic Development Advisory Council. Kevin, sit tight. We'll introduce the other two panelists that we've got today. Joining Kevin is going to be Marcos Delgado. He's joining us today from El Paso. He's the Executive Vice President at the Borderplex Alliance. His responsibilities include business recruitment, retention, and expansion efforts, economic development, of course, and strategic partnerships for the region. He also oversees the organization's operations management. He has more than 20 years experience in the engineering business fields in both the United States and Mexico. He's held various engineering management positions with companies like Rockwell International, TI Automotive Group, and the Whirlpool Corporation, global companies all. Marcos served as vice president at Neologic International, a United States-based manufacturing firm with operations in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. After his tenure with Neologic International, Mr. Delgado served as vice president at SLI Engineering, a privately held engineering project management and land development company. At SLI Engineering, he managed the firm's U.S. and Mexico business development efforts and business operations functions. Marcos has served on the board of directors of the Notre Dame Club of El Paso and the National Society of Hispanic MBAs. He's also a member of the University of Texas El Paso Alumni Association, Society of Automotive Engineers, and currently serves on the advisory board of the Lone Star Emerging Business Fund. He holds a bachelor's science degree in industrial engineering from the University of Texas at El Paso and a master's degree in business administration from the University of Notre Dame. Welcome, Marcos. And now to complete our group, let's welcome Jenna Salcedo Herrera. She's been president and CEO of the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation since 2016. In this capacity, Jenna works with a talented team to advance the diversification and growth of the San Antonio regional economy through domestic and international business development, workforce development partnerships, and many market strategies. During her tenure there, the foundation has secured more than 18,000 jobs from 84 projects that include Ernst & Young, Victory Capital, Booz Allen Hamilton, Hulu, Oaken, TJX, Navistar. I worked on a lot of these with you, Jenna. Eisen AW. Before joining the foundation, Jenna served as Vice President of Public Affairs and Brand Management for CPS Energy, where she led the economic development, corporate communications, marketing, and corporate social responsibility functions for that organization. Jenna's received accolades, including the 2015 Women in Leadership Award and the 2017 40 Under 40 Women of the Year Award from the San Antonio Business Journal. Now, she's been acknowledged by the San Antonio Express News and their Women Who Run San Antonio feature, and she's been recognized in Culture Map's Top Texans Under 30. She's an alumna of St. Mary's University with a Bachelor of Business Administration and Marketing Management and a graduate of the Rice University Executive Education Program. She's also a member of the Texas Women's Forum and the International Women's Forum. Jenna serves on several community boards and councils, including Visit San Antonio, Texas Biomedical Research Institute, BioBridge Global, Epicenter, United Way of San Antonio and Bexar County, San Antonio Medical Foundation, City Education Partners, and the UP Partnership. What a panel. Great introduction, guys. Thank you all. As I said, I've spent some time on the plains, know a little bit about what's going on in the Panhandle and Amarillo area. I've done a lot of work, traveled many miles with Marcos Delgado from El Paso. El Paso is such a great city. All our cities represented today are. I always tell people, if you're looking at Phoenix and you're not looking at El Paso, you need to be looking at El Paso, because everything Phoenix can deliver, El Paso can do better. In San Antonio, I have a daughter living in San Antonio right now. She's will be graduating in about 2 weeks from Trinity University with a degree in finance. And so we've become so wonderfully familiar with San Antonio and all it has to offer. And of course, as I said earlier, I've worked on a number of projects down there. Great group. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us today. We got to get right into the questions because we just have a limited amount of time here. Everyone here on this panel's on the front lines of marketing your city, region, or workforce. So it's the same set of questions we asked the last panel, because I think we got some great responses. Workforce, as we all know, it's kind of a top issue for those looking at Texas among some of the other things you're talking about in economic development. What are some specific things that you're doing to really highlight that workforce to the folks you're talking about, to the businesses that want to create jobs in your area? Kevin, we'll just go ahead and start with you, and we'll work our way through the panel. We'll try to take turns here.
Okay, thanks, Chairman Daniel. Thank you for having me this morning. Yeah, we've done a couple of things. Chairman Daniel stated that Amarillo has typically one of the lowest unemployment rates. That was about 2.7 before the COVID, and I think right now we're running about 4.5 to 4.9% unemployment. That's a challenge when you're trying to recruit companies and workforce, but we've tried to come up with a couple of programs to recruit workers from outside of Amarillo to come in and to grow our city and to grow our workforce. And one of those programs, we did a survey in 2019 of a lot of larger employers, and a lot of the problems that came up were we could bring professional people in, but they didn't know what to do with their spouses. And so what they would do for work. And so we created what we call Take Root in Amarillo. It's a website and living wage job board. We introduced that in January of 2020. There are several functions with this website, and it has to do with quality of life. It talks about neighborhoods. It talks about people's experience of people that have lived here all their life and people that have moved here in the last few years, whether it's with our Texas Tech Medical School or Bell Helicopter or some of our larger employers, and some of our smaller employers are people that are entrepreneurs and have moved to Amarillo to start a business. And so that website also has a living wage job board on that, and living wage here in Amarillo is what we call just above the median average. And so we put that out about 2.5 months before COVID, and we had a huge success last year. But in the first 4 months of this year, we've already had as much activity as we had all of last year. So really excited about how 2021 has started with this program and what TakeRootInAmarillo.com has done for us. And then one of the other kind of functions out of that was our intern program, and it's called Uncover Amarillo Intern Experience. We're very fortunate to have a full-time workforce person, and they she's in her late 20s. And so not that fresh out of college and knew how important it was to have an experience for those younger folks when they're here just for maybe 6 or 8 weeks interning at one of our companies. And so we created this intern experience. In the first year we had 51, and last year in COVID we had about 40, but we've already got 70 something signed up, and we're not even quite to June yet. And so what that does is they put these interns that typically would just go to work and then go back to their apartment or whatever. It puts those, we have 4 events for them, and it gets them together, and they really get to see what Amarillo has to offer. And that way, maybe we can keep some of these interns here with some of these companies here in Amarillo and grow our workforce at the in the younger generation, and show them what Amarillo has to offer that they might not experience had they not gone to our intern experience.
What a great experience for everyone. Everyone, I think, benefits when we can do these internship, apprenticeship, where we can introduce folks to what's going on in the community. Marcos, I know you guys have a lot of great things going on there. Always. I think it's because you get that extra hour each day being in the Mountain Time Zone. I'm not sure exactly how you get it all done, but you do. Tell us a little bit about some things going on at Boardplex and how that's really translating to success in the community.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Daniel, for having me on today. This is a fantastic event. Well, I'll tell you about El Paso and workforces. 40% of El Paso's population is below the age of 25. So right there, when we sit and talk to companies and they perform their site visits, that's the first stat we throw at them, because they'll come at us and say, hey, if I move there tomorrow or relocate or expand, will I find my workforce? And we tell them, not only will you find your workforce, you'll find a pipeline, a talent pipeline coming in right behind it. So the programs that we've initiated and that we collaborate with our regional partners on are basically to get kids ready for a 4-year college education path, or another type of career path where they can get the proper training, enter the workforce immediately. We've been doing that for a couple of years, and I think that the best way we've been able to accomplish that, like many other economic development organizations in Texas, is that we have a workforce and education function, a team member that handles that for us. And I'd like to give kudos to Casey Hune on our team, who has established tremendous relationships with the universities, community colleges, and our corporate partners. Of course, our biggest partner and collaborator being the Texas Workforce Commission. Great team on the ground here in El Paso that helps us with recruitment. Those specific programs, the one thing I do encourage EDOs to do is once you've attracted a company in town, is have them become part of the community, but also help you develop your talent and your workforce. So we're fortunate enough to have done that with Prudential Financial, ADP, and Microsoft. Prudential Financial and ADP have actually created their own programs within the community college, skills training, certification. They fund it, and then by gosh, they take those students in when they finish, right? They're creating their own work pool. Prudential created a risk academy at the University of Texas at El Paso within the College of Business. Started especially the actuarial sciences. They started their own program, again creating their own pipeline. And I think for us that's been the most exciting and beneficial aspect of what we do, is having these corporate partners help us and in turn helping themselves.
Well, man, so wonderful partnership you've got going on there. We're going to come back to that. We're going to talk to Jennifer just a second about in San Antonio. Basically the same question. What are the things you're looking at? What are the partnerships and programs that you're doing that are really making a lot of your success so possible there in San Antonio?
Well, good morning, everyone. And Chairman Daniel, Robert, thank you so much for the invitation to participate. I am a huge fan of our state's leadership in both economic and workforce development, and just really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate like we're doing here today on lessons learned. And I'm jotting notes from all of the panelists that I've had a chance to hear from today. So thank you. In San Antonio, there are 3 programs that I'd like to highlight, specifically proven programs at that. But before I go there, I just want to reiterate some of the comments that were made from all of our colleagues, but primarily the previous panel. At the end of the day, workforce development is it. Workforce development is economic development today. And CEOs are chasing young and diverse talent. And we within the state of Texas have that in spades, and specifically within the city of San Antonio, we have that with our regional partners. So positioning that and leveraging it to our advantage is extremely important within our day jobs. But of course, for the longer term needs, it's important that we rally around these programs that, to Marcus's point, pull in all of the different collaborators around the region. So first and foremost, I'd like to highlight SA Works, which is our workforce program within the Economic Development Foundation. It was founded by two of our largest employers, HEB and Holt Cat, with the idea of convening and centralizing conversations around employer needs. That sounds incredibly simple, but if you think about San Antonio, we are blessed to have 16 universities pumping out about 160,000 students. We also have 17 school districts. And that makes it a little bit challenging for an employer to figure out where to engage. And SA Works has really positioned itself, the team has positioned themselves as the central convening entity. We produce jobs reports that highlight both strengths and potential gaps within our market. And then we promote opportunities within our target demand career paths through work-based learning programs, and then also advertising campaigns to target youth and also dislocated workers within our San Antonio market. This past year, we had about 13,000 students participate in our work-based learning programs, just to show you the size and scale of what we're doing within the EDF. The second program I'd like to highlight is Texas Fame. And this program was founded by Bexar County. SA Works is a partner here, and multiple industry representatives as well. And we were trying to solve for a gap that Toyota saw within the manufacturing industry. So we needed more advanced manufacturers at scale, right? So AMTs, advanced manufacturing technicians. So I think you've got Toyota, their supply chain, Navistar, their potential supply chain, now Tesla up north and the supply chain that comes along with that. And so we stood up this program a couple of years ago with the idea of deploying a dual track apprenticeship training program. Bexar County's also invested in a facility to do just this. They've graduated about 48 technicians, and over 90% of those folks are employed here in San Antonio, and they're earning exceptional wages, right? So we'll continue to scale that program. And then last, and I would argue most importantly, is SA Ready to Work. Our community voted in favor of reallocating $30 million annually of existing taxes to focus on training subsidies within our demand occupation. That's a huge deal. We're still trying to figure out how to execute and deploy the program, and specifically trying to target a lot of the wraparound services or the barriers to entry for these training programs. But when we pull this off, it's not if, but when, this is going to be game changing, not just for San Antonio, but for our surrounding regions. So those are the three programs I'd like to highlight here.
And cool stuff. And I think making an impact in the community. Truth be told, I get to learn about a lot of things. I read about a lot of things. And Jenna, I've heard about all three of those through the stuff that I'm looking at, because I think they are making an incredible impact in South Central Texas and certainly Bexar County and San Antonio. I'm going to ask just a little variation on this same question, because everybody talked about some very successful things that are going on right now. But what are you hearing from prospective businesses, business partners? What's the next thing we need to work on? Where does this head? Let me reverse order here. We'll go right back to Jenna. But what's the next thing that you're going to need to work on that the business community or maybe your educational community is telling you that they need, and it's something that you want to focus on for your community?
So it's a great question, and I'm going to attack it in a couple of different ways. First and foremost, right now, the priority of the majority of the Fortune 100s and 500s that we're either attempting to court for the San Antonio region or those that exist here and we're trying to keep here and grow here, they're focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're focused on, of course, growing their talent pipeline, but figuring out ways to tap into the opportunity for minority students to pursue the degree tracks that we're all on this panel talking about. And as I mentioned, San Antonio is extremely proud to be a majority minority community, primarily Latino. at about 56%. And we are taking full advantage of the opportunity to lean into this theme and this concept that all these large employers are driving, because we know that there are still pockets of our community where these students are lagging behind, and there are real poverty issues, not just in San Antonio, but across the state of Texas. And if we're truly going to compete as a top performing economy, we've got to make sure that we're rising all ships in the process. So that's number one. Number two is this dynamic of remote work. And a lot of folks see this, and I talk to obviously our local real estate community all the time, and some folks see it as a challenge. And I'm here to tell you, I think it is our greatest opportunity across the state of Texas, because we have such an incredible cost of living here that we can attract talent and they can work anywhere. They can earn a Bay Area salary while living in San Antonio or Dallas or Austin and spending their money within the state of Texas. It's also, in my opinion, a huge opportunity for our rural communities, right? If we can lean into that as a state and as a local community, I think we'll truly differentiate ourselves there. Beyond those types of kind of macro opportunities, discretely within industries, we've gotten to a point where it's not just saying, okay, we need more manufacturing workers. We know specifically what the scarce skill sets are in manufacturing, in bioscience and healthcare and technology. I can tell you our technology companies, they need sales, engineering, and marketing folks. Healthcare needs nurses. Skilled trades need absolutely everything. And so we know what those scarce skill sets are. What we're trying to do is hustle to not just close the gap, but ideally get to what we would prefer, an oversupply, so that we have those folks readily available, because the pipeline isn't slowing down anytime soon, and we want to take full advantage of that.
Man, very clear focus on where you're headed. That's going to pay such dividends in the future. Let's take the same question to El Paso. Marcos, what next things to work on, things you're hearing about, things you're trying to address?
Skill sets, and that's the first thing companies ask for, is what kind of skill sets are available. So that's why we're gearing these programs with the universities and community colleges to create that workforce. We're also, one of our big initiatives is to push this training down to the ISD level. And unfortunately, we've created two fantastic partnerships in the last year. One with Google, where they're teaching G Suite to the local Region 19 or education service to the teachers. And then later this year, it gets rolled down to students at the high school level. And also Palo Alto Networks with cybersecurity. We have a relationship with them, and they're now in the process of establishing cybersecurity academies at UT El Paso, and then again through Region 19, the local education service. So again, we're seeing that because companies are asking for it, right? What are you doing at the early stages in the education cycle to get our young population upskilled? The other thing I will mention is, and Jenna touched on it, was work from home. It's interesting when companies come in, they look at that work from home component, but they're asking us about resources. So they're coming in saying, hey, I want half my workforce to be work from home. Talk to me about fiber. What's next in fiber? Talk to me about communications stable. Because if I set up someone at home, I want to be able, to have them perform at their best. And kind of in the same vein, we're a manufacturing logistics hub. And of course, in those cases, you can't work from home necessarily. But the interesting question we keep getting asked is, give me some transit times and bus routes. So more and more companies are becoming more interested in the resources available to employees, either to get them to work or to enhance their work performance. So again, it's very much like San Antonio. El Paso is a little over 80% Hispanic population, and in the past 6 months or so, a lot of inclusion questions have come up during our workforce searches, and we feel this is a great place to be. And those we're going to start heading in that direction with some of our marketing campaigns.
All right, let's take the question to Amarillo. Next steps, things you're hearing, trends companies are asking you to work on.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Daniel. One of the things that we've been talking about, and it's just what Jenna and Marcus talked about, was skill set from several of our employers that we have and the ones that we're trying to recruit. And those were skill set, specific types of skill sets And then also, just from our local folks on needs with HVAC and plumbing and those kind of things. And so our Amarillo ISD got with our Amarillo College to create, and some community members to create what we call our apprenticeship model, and we call it the Earn and Learn model. And what that's going to do is we're going to try to get these kids when they're 14 to 15 years old, freshmen and sophomores, and teach them a skill, and they will have a level 1 certificate when they get out of high school, that if they want to pursue that field, they can already go to work, and they've been making money in this apprenticeship model to not have debt when they come out of high school, and that, you know, they'll have 30 hours of community college. Our Amarillo ISD and our community is investing $65 million in what we're calling our AmTech Career Academy. They've got about 65 different skill sets that they're going to work on with students. We currently have a career academy that has got about 900 students enrolled. We're hopeful that this AmTech Career Academy is going to be finished by when school starts in the fall. They've got a little bit more construction to do, but they've already got 2,900 kids enrolled. So enrollment's already gone up 3 times with the new Career Academy. So we're hoping to address that talent pipeline and those needs that our local employers need now, and then the workforce needs of the future when we recruit other companies in.
I'm always just completely blown away by the amount of innovation and creativity, but that level of customization that goes on for the employers and the community. So we're gonna push the envelope here. We're right up on time. I'm gonna squeeze in one more question because I'm fascinated by all this. I want to learn just a little bit more. So all 3 of you have touched on your partnerships in your community. All 3 of you have touched on your educational offerings in your community. Something that you all 3 have in common. You've got a great community college environment in your community, some of you with more than one community college. All of you have multiple major universities, system universities in your community. You know, Amarillo, Texas Tech, Texas A&M system. I think you're probably also touched by University of Texas system, same in San Antonio, UTSA, Texas A&M, Texas Tech over in the Hill Country. Certainly in El Paso, we see Texas Tech, University of Texas system. There's other universities operating, plus the private schools. Tell me, we just have a few minutes, maybe like 6, but tell me how those partnerships with your higher education and maybe even your high schools, tell me how you see those really giving you solid impact for the future. We'll start with Marcos, and then we'll work our way to Jenna and then to Kevin. So Marcos, tell us a little bit about that university, community college, we'll call it the educational community, and how big a factor you think that's going to be in addressing these workforce needs.
Huge. I was at a conference a year or 2 years ago now, pre-COVID, and there was a governor from another state that his first comment was that education is the best tool we have in the economic development toolbox, and that, bar none, is the best line I've heard, and it's so true. So our collaboration with the universities has been fantastic. One, our organization is a focal point, one, in connecting them to the private sector, right, to get those programs going, to get funding going, grants going, and it's worked out very well. The universities are key as community colleges because we add them or include them in the site visits or the request for proposal process early on. When we receive one of those documents and we're working on a proposal, they're on the team that helps us put it together. So they're in it from day one. If we're fortunate enough to garner a site visit, then these companies get to meet them in person. And very much, as Mike Rosa said, when we have companies come in and we have our education workforce panels and we talk about what's available in the region, the programs for these different companies, or even tailoring something specific to their needs, they walk away saying the same thing. I said, hey, everyone here is in unison. You all are singing off the same sheet. Did you guys rehearse this? And it's like, no, we didn't rehearse it. We actually do this every day, right? So that's where the universities come in. I will tell you another component that's really key is the military. and military veterans. They make a great workforce. And I know we haven't discussed that yet, but we're fortunate enough to have Fort Bliss, Texas at our back door, with 34,000 active military, 500 to 600 servicemen and women exiting through Fort Bliss every month. We're working hard to keep most of them here, right? Either continue their education or find a position in the private sector. They are very much a great collaborator with us, again, in attracting companies. Again, I would urge any of the cities in the state that do have a military presence, put that front and center, because companies, especially Fortune 500s, are looking for those veterans. They're looking for those programs, that kind of leadership and the characteristics that they built in the military. Again, they all collaborate, and they're all part of our team when we're in the recruiting phase.
Ryan, I just have to say amen to everything that Marcos just outlined, primarily with regards to the military and the Department of Defense. So obviously in San Antonio, JBSA is the largest joint base within the country, and they are a huge talent pool for us. If you think about, cybersecurity is one of our most competitive industries that we're growing here. And second only to the capital region, San Antonio boasts the largest concentration of cyber assets. And so a lot of the companies that we're courting to grow here within that industry are requiring certain clearances. And that veteran population, they have them, right? And so it makes so much sense to partner there. But to your discrete question about alignment with the education community, in San Antonio, our universities, our community colleges, our high schools, our private providers like CODEP and others, they are all rowing in the same direction. And folks might find it hard to believe that, the president of both of our state systems, and Texas A&M, San Antonio, and UTSA, they communicate regularly. It is a beautiful thing. But there's strategic alignment and also operational alignment, to what Marcus previously mentioned as well. Strategically, I think all of these organizations have come around to understand that their customers are not just the students. Their customers are our employers, our current employers and our future employers. We all agree to that. And so everything that they do on a day-to-day basis is about filling that customer's needs, which is a beautiful thing for me. Secondarily, on the operations side, there's a little bit of overlap. The university presidents are serving on my board. Their operations teams engage directly with my business developers and my workforce teams on proposals and the like. So a lot of coordination. We've got a lot of room for improvement, I think, but we have made so much progress, and specifically being aligned around the industries, the demand and the supply side.
Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. That, exactly what Marcos and Jenna said, but we do use them in recruiting. We specifically for sure use Amarillo College every time as part of the training that we can do specifically for that organization that we're recruiting. But then also we use West Texas A&M or a Texas Tech faculty member that has recently moved in. We use them as an example of somebody that has recently moved to Amarillo, and talk to those companies about why they moved to Amarillo and the great things that they've seen since they've been in Amarillo for a short time, to help that company realize what the opportunities are in Amarillo for somebody that works in the university system and then is also a recently transplanted person to Amarillo. And then we also, like Jenna was talking about, our universities see the companies that we have in town and the companies that we recruit as potential new students, their kids, and their even themselves as new customers at the university level and the Amarillo College level.
Yeah, so much going on, and we talked about so many different things, and now we find ourselves at the end of our time. Guys, thanks so much for serving on our panel. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I know you've agreed to kind of hang around for some questions, and I've got one question that's already come in on the chat. So to the panelists, thank you so much. So many great things going on, and I want to say personally, I think folks watching today on the webinar can understand why I've had so much fun working with these guys over the last several years in the economic development space. Traveling with Marcos, working on Kevin on things up in the Panhandle, see him at meetings all over the place. tell you one funny story about Jenna, and I got to jump right into questions. When she first started her job, we were working on a project together, and she said, "Hey, can I have your phone number?" So I gave her the phone number. She said, "Is this your cell phone?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, good." And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but now I know what that meant. Jenna needs something, she will call you, and you will help her. And the same is true for the other guys as well. So guys, thank you so much for everything that you do for Texas, for your community, and certainly for being on this webinar here today. So I've got a question in from one of our viewers out there. This is for Eddie C. at the port. Eddie, the question is, can you provide an update on the performance of the Work Cats project in the Port of Brownsville?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question.
The question is from, I'm sorry to interrupt, the question is from Chris Flores Ledbetter. So you'll know who asked the question.
Thank you, Chris. One is the WorkCat project is late last summer, early spring, we launched a container service from the Port of Brownsville to Tampa, Florida. This is not an intercoastal service. This is direct Gulf service, ocean going barge. And it focuses particularly not necessarily on the conventional TEU, whether it's the 20 or 40-foot box, but it's really on the high cube 53-foot containers, very similar to the truck chassis. And essentially, one of the big things that has proven to hold out is that it is great for the home goods industry. We're talking about the refrigerators, stoves, washing machines, and the like. And so what has it created for us is an availability of how do we link, South Texas with not only Florida, but really East Coast markets and beyond, the Southeast. So that service, every month we see more and more containers coming on the service. Again, the home goods have been a big user of it, but the same thing goes with another anchor is the top floor tile, construction, again, material going to not only Florida, but throughout the East Coast. We've got other commodities such as hand sanitizers, Mexican soda beverages. I mean, it's a whole host. And that's really somewhat the beauty of the container service is that you can put anything in a container. And by being able to put it on a vessel and ship it by ocean, well, one, not only does it get there sooner, it doesn't rely on that truck connectivity all the way from, let's say we're pulling cargo from Laredo or from northern Mexico through Monterrey, or even here in the Rio Grande Valley. That truck from here to Florida, or from here to Philadelphia, from here to Baltimore, or wherever it may be, you can get it there certainly faster, cheaper, and safer, and more environmentally friendly on the water than you can driving it. One of the things we hear a lot is, the prospects of driver shortages. The fact that on the commercial drivers, is they're facing challenges with being able to hire truckers. So it is a service that, like I said, every month it continues to grow. We see more and more boxes every month going on that service. It's weekly service. And I think it provides us an opportunity not only to expand the service offering more frequently, but even the access to other markets. This kind of service can also connect us to other Gulf ports in the future. It continues to grow. So we're excited about it, but it's up and going. It is growing. We see more and more boxes again every month, and we see great opportunities there going forward.
Thank you, sir.
So we have a second question, and actually, Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be best addressed to you, actually. And we do have a lot of really great questions from those that are tuning in today, and I think we're going to bump up against time. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send those to our panelists today. So we'll get you some answers to those questions because they're really, really good. But Mr. Chairman, this is a two-part question, and I think it's a great question that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to direct it to you. It's from Larry and Jerry, unrelated, by the way. Larry's question is, considering the strain to find employees, what tools are you using and what tools can we use to draw from all skill levels, including low-skilled workers? And then kind of the tag-on question from Jerry is, what is being done to establish a sustainable pipeline of talent to fill skilled positions in the future? And he gives some examples, in particular, advanced CNC, applications, PLC programmers, multi-skilled maintenance for robots. So a great two-part question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll turn the tables on Brian. I was supposed to be asking the questions, but I'm gonna answer that. Great tools at the Workforce Commission. First of those is workintexas.com. If you are an employer and you are looking for employees, please check out workintexas.com. This is a tool we use primarily with our unemployment insurance program, but it actually has applications that are beyond that. If you want to work with us a little more in depth, I'll give you a tool that's called MyTxCareer, mytexascareer.com. It is mostly the same data that's in workintexas.com. It's a great clearinghouse for employers to put their jobs out there. It's basically an electronic bulletin board in the form of a website. You can post your job, and our workforce solutions offices around the state will be able to help you facilitate doing interviews for those jobs that you post on either one of those websites. So that's a direct way TWC is helping with that. Now, in all fairness, we're in contact with the folks you see on the two panels here today, plus a number of other people in each of our communities across the state. So no matter where you are, even, we can only have, 6 panelists today. So if you're in Houston, obviously Greater Houston Partnership, most communities in this state have someone working in the area of economic development. And in addition to that, if you're in Texas, you're likely in a community college district, or there's a university that serves your region nearby. So schools, big and large, we work through them a lot to be able to do that. And that leads us into the answer to the second question, which is pipeline. So we've got to work with folks in our local communities to understand the needs of those folks in those communities. And we then work with educational providers and others. The work that we've been doing with the Texas Education Agency and the Higher Education Coordinating Board at the state level, we're trying to push out to local communities to help understand those pipelines and build those so that employers have a reliable way to be sure that those jobs are going to fill. I have been talking a lot about the middle skills gap, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's our opportunity to know that when someone retires, we have someone ready to replace them in that job. Here's one example. There are many more. I only have time for one. And it's this. You've got to get in the workforce out of school and get going. And you need to get promoted because that's better for your family. It's more wages for you if you can get promoted. And there's people coming out of school behind you. We've got to get them in the workforce as well. This works really well when we can get you the skills you need in school, get you into the workforce, and get you into sort of a lifelong learning situation. Because look, Kevin and Marcos and Jenna and Eddie and Mike, they're not going to stop recruiting employers to the community. There's going to be opportunities. There's going to be new jobs created. We're going to have ways to be able to place you in those jobs. So it's kind of a double responsibility. The leaders in this state are going to continue to work on the economy and keep it moving in the direction we want to see it moving. And those leaders are going to create those jobs locally. And I think for individuals, Texans in this state, we have educational opportunities available that will help get you into that pipeline and get you matched up with an employer that can give you that job satisfaction that you're looking for. We work for wages, most of us, but when you can work somewhere for wages and it's fun, it's exciting, it's engaging, it's a pleasant place to work, well, I think that makes all the difference in the world. You heard professionals in this state talk about how employers are thinking about that workplace for you. And so when you bring those skills that they're looking for in there, you can really find that nice matchup where you like where you work, they like the work you do, and that makes for a long. So we've got a lot of opportunities here. That's really the best way I can answer the question in a short amount of time. Workintexas.com, mytexascareer.com. Find your local educational institutions, find your local workforce development board, or contact your economic development folks who can put you in touch with those people. No one on this call was kidding. No one on this call was exaggerating when they talked about the partnerships locally between the educational providers, the economic development folks, the elected officials, and the business leaders in those communities. In fact, they undersold it. Those partnerships are so unbelievably strong. It's what powers this economy here in the state of Texas. I really appreciate everyone taking time to share with us here today. Robert, thank you so much for the partnership on these webinars. I'm having fun, but we're learning an awful lot every 2 weeks when we do one of these. So panelists, my eternal gratitude. Wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks for spending some time with us. Folks that are watching, thanks for tuning in. We've got a couple of folks that have been to all of them, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. It helps us understand that we're putting some good content out there, news you can use and things you can put to work immediately. And so just by way of closing, Robert, I would just say this. We appreciate the way this is coming together. We talked to four-year schools, we talked to community colleges, then we talked to trade schools. We've talked to sort of alternative education programs. And now you're seeing how that gets put in practice today with our economic development folks. We're not done with these webinars yet. We're going to come back on May 19th for one final webinar where we talk to Mike Morath, Commissioner at the Texas Education Agency, and Harrison Keller, the Commissioner at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And we're going to talk through tri-agency initiatives and how all the things that we've learned through our webinars, talking about the state workforce strategy, how those can be put into practice at the state level. And so state leaders are going to come together and talk about how each of these components and all the things that we've learned from panelists, just like today's panelists, how all of these help us build the solutions to the challenges that we see in moving Texas forward and keeping that Texas economy where we want it to be. So I hope you'll join us on May 19th. I think it's going to be a phenomenal webinar. All of them have been, and we keep definitely building on this body of work and coming to some statewide workforce strategy and understanding how we can put this into practice in our local communities. Robert, thanks again for all of your work with this. It's been such a wonderful partnership. I'm looking forward to continuing it. Panelists, as always, thank you so much for spending time with us. And folks at home or at the office watching this on the webinar, we couldn't do it without you. Thanks for your support and your participation. I think we're really putting together something good here and something that's going to give us some leadership far into the future.